The shuttle leaves him with a polite mechanical hum, as if it has manners, which is more than can be said for the mission briefing he'd been given. One moment it is there, blocking out the dull sky, the next it lifts and dissolves into a shrinking point of light, taking with it the last guarantee that anything in this situation makes sense. He watches it go longer than necessary, partly out of habit, partly because turning around feels like accepting something he is not entirely ready to accept. Silence settles in, not gradually, but all at once, like a switch has been flipped somewhere just outside perception. He shifts his weight, boots pressing into the gray surface beneath him. The ground looks solid enough, feels solid enough, though it has the faint visual quality of something that forgot to load its textures properly. He taps his helmet once, just to confirm he is still wearing it and hasn't somehow misplaced an entire environmental suit without noticing. The tap echoes louder than it should. "Great," he mutters, voice transmitted back into his own ears. "Already talking to myself. New record." His scanner hums to life, projecting a soft display across the inside of his visor. Atmospheric readings, stable. Radiation, minimal. Biological signatures, none. He stares at that last line for a second longer than the others, as if expecting it to reconsider out of politeness. It does not. "Biologically null," he says, repeating the official classification with a tone that suggests he does not entirely trust official classifications. Sounds like something you write when you don't feel like double-checking. He takes a step forward, then another. The landscape does not change, which is impressive in its own way. No wind, no distant movement, not even the courtesy of a rock trying to look interesting. It is a place that has committed fully to the concept of nothing and refuses to break character. He walks for several minutes before realizing he has been counting his steps without meaning to. At 112 he stops, frowns slightly and looks down. There is a footprint in front of him. It is not his. He stands there considering the options. Option 1, he has somehow stepped forward without noticing, which would be concerning but at least explainable. Option 2, the ground has developed a sense of humor. Option 3, something else is here. "Well," he says, folding his arms slowly, "I'm going to go with option 1 because the other two are terrible." He lifts his foot deliberately and places it forward, aligning it carefully with the existing print. It does not match. His boot is wider, heavier, undeniably different. "Okay," he continues, voice steady in a way that feels slightly forced. "New theory. I am either not alone or I am developing a very specific hallucination. If it's the second one, I would like to file a complaint in advance." He glances around. The horizon remains exactly as it was, flat, distant, indifferent. No movement, no shapes. No helpful signs pointing toward, mysterious footprint origin this way. He exhales slowly, then steps forward again. Another footprint appears ahead of him. Not formed gradually, not emerging from shifting dust, but simply there, as though it had always been waiting for him to notice it. He stops mid-step, frozen between motion and stillness, the kind of pause that feels like the world is watching to see what he does next. "Right," he says quietly. "That's new." He looks back over his shoulder. His own trail stretches behind him, clear and consistent, a neat line of evidence that he exists and has been moving in a straight line like a sensible person. Ahead of him, the other prints continue, evenly spaced, leading somewhere that does not yet exist in his field of vision. He considers turning back. The thought lingers for a moment, tempting in its simplicity. Return to the landing site, call for extraction. Pretend this is above his pay grade, which it absolutely is. Instead, he sighs and starts walking forward again. "Fine," he mutters, "but if this turns out to be some kind of cosmic prank, I am not laughing." The silence does not respond. It simply waits, patient and complete, like something that has all the time in the universe and is in no hurry to explain itself. He keeps walking because stopping would mean admitting that something here is making decisions before he does, and he is not ready to give that kind of authority to a planet that can't even manage basic scenery. The footprints continue at a steady rhythm, as if whoever, or whatever, is leaving them has an excellent sense of pacing. He matches them step for a while, then deliberately breaks the pattern, stepping wide to the side. A new print appears ahead of him anyway. "You're very committed to this," he mutters, glancing around. "I respect the dedication. I just don't appreciate being part of the performance." His scanner flickers. The display blinks once, then again, numbers rearranging themselves like they've suddenly forgotten their purpose. Biological signatures, none. Biological signatures, multiple. Biological signatures, none again. "Pick one," he says. "Preferably the comforting lie." The horizon shifts. Not dramatically, not enough to trigger alarms, just enough that when he looks back at where he came from, something feels edited. The landing site should still be visible. It is not. In its place stretches the same uninterrupted gray, like the planet has quietly decided that origin points are unnecessary details. "Okay," he says slowly. "That's new. That's definitely new." He turns in a full circle. Everything looks identical, which is impressive in a deeply unhelpful way. He raises a hand, pointing at nothing in particular. "I'd just like to note," he says, "that removing landmarks is a very aggressive design choice. Not user-friendly at all." Something flickers at the edge of his vision. He turns his head quickly, but there is nothing there, just the same empty stretch. He narrows his eyes, then deliberately looks forward again. It happens again. A shape, thin, vertical, impossibly tall, standing in the distance for a fraction of a second before dissolving into the background like it changed its mind about existing. "Right," he says quietly. "So now we have disappearing architecture." He starts walking toward where it appeared, because apparently his survival instincts have decided curiosity is the priority today. The ground remains consistent beneath his feet, the footprints still leading him onward like a trail that refuses to be ignored. The structure appears again, closer this time. It looks wrong in a way that is difficult to explain, like something built using rules that only partially overlap with reality. Lines bend where they should be straight. Angles shift when he tries to focus on them. For a moment he thinks it might be a tower, then it becomes something else entirely. He takes another step. It vanishes. He stops, staring at the empty space where it had been. Okay, so approaching it is apparently offensive. He folds his arms, considering this. "Fine, new strategy. I'm not approaching you. I'm just happening to move in your general direction, very casually, no pressure." He takes a step forward. Nothing appears. He takes another, slower this time, as if the planet might respond better to politeness. Still nothing. He exhales, long and patient, then rubs the side of his helmet. This is exactly the kind of thing they don't cover in training. If the environment starts reacting to your intentions, try being less intentional. Very helpful. The whisper comes then, not through his ears, not through his comms. It arrives fully formed inside his thoughts, like a sentence he almost remembers hearing before. He freezes. "No," he says immediately, "we are not doing that." Another whisper follows, softer, overlapping the first. Not words exactly, more like impressions. Curiosity, recognition, something that feels uncomfortably like amusement. He points at the empty air again. "Listen, if you're going to be in my head, at least introduce yourself. There are rules. I'm pretty sure there are rules." The impressions shift, swirling at the edge of understanding. For a moment, he gets the sense that something is trying to respond, struggling to translate itself into a form he can process. He takes a slow step back. The ground beneath him changes. Not visibly, not at first, but the sensation is immediate, like stepping onto something that remembers being something else. He looks down. The texture has subtly altered, patterns forming where there were none before. "Okay," he says, voice quieter now. That's not great." The footprints ahead stop. Not fade, not disappear. They simply end, as if the one who made them has decided this is as far as he needs to go on his own. He looks up. The horizon is no longer empty. Shapes linger there now, faint and shifting, watching in a way that does not require eyes. The silence is still present, but it feels different, heavier, like it is no longer passive. "You know," he says slowly, forcing a small, dry laugh, "for a dead planet you're doing a lot." The whispers return, clearer this time, brushing against his thoughts with something that almost resembles intent. And for the first time, he gets the distinct impression that whatever is here is not just observing him. It is waiting for him to understand. He doesn't move at first, not because he's frozen, but because he has the distinct feeling that movement is now something the planet expects from him. The horizon no longer pretends to be empty. Shapes linger there, tall and uncertain, like thoughts that haven't decided what they are yet. The footprints end a few steps ahead, which feels less like a coincidence and more like a boundary. "All right," he says quietly, hands resting at his sides. "This is where I say something confident and professional." He pauses. "I've got nothing." The whisper returns, clearer this time, brushing against his mind with something that almost resembles a voice. Not words, not exactly, but structured enough that he can tell it's trying. He exhales slowly. "Okay, we're doing this. Fantastic." He points to his helmet. "Just so we're clear, this is already occupied, limited seating. No reservations." The presence shifts. It doesn't move in space. It moves in meaning. The ground ahead of him ripples, not physically, not in a way that breaks form, but in a way that suggests form was never entirely stable to begin with. The air feels heavier, like it's paying attention. Then she appears. Not suddenly. Not completely. She forms in layers, like reality is assembling her piece by piece and occasionally second-guessing the instructions. At first he thinks it's just distortion, light bending, horizon warping, but then the shape holds. A figure. Tall, slender, but not bound by the idea of symmetry. Parts of her exist a fraction of a second ahead or behind the rest, as if time itself isn't entirely sure where to place her. He blinks once. Twice. "Right," he says. "So we've moved on from footprints to full manifestations. That's efficient." She tilts. He thinks it's a tilt, though it could just be perspective adjusting itself around her. Her surface doesn't reflect light the way it should. It refracts it, splitting the dull gray into faint, shifting colors that shouldn't exist in this environment. Where her face should be, there is a suggestion of features, soft distortions like reflections on water trying to imitate expression. The voice comes again. This time it almost forms a word. He flinches slightly, then steadies himself. "Hey, easy, one thing at a time. Maybe start with something simple like hello, big fan of hello." A pause, then faintly, imperfectly, "Hello." He freezes, then lets out a short breath that turns into a quiet laugh. "Okay. That's actually impressive." The word echoes inside his head, not repeating but lingering, as if it's being examined from multiple angles. She steps, or something equivalent, closer, though he can't pinpoint the exact moment distance changes. "You're not supposed to be here." The voice forms, clearer now, though still layered with overlapping tones. He raises an eyebrow beneath the helmet. "That's interesting because I was specifically sent here. There was paperwork. It was very official." A flicker of something passes through her form, amusement maybe, or confusion trying on a new shape. "Sent," she repeats as if testing the concept. "You were given." "Given," he echoes. That sounds significantly less comforting. The ground beneath him shifts again, patterns forming in subtle lines that seem to respond to the rhythm of the conversation. He glances down briefly, then back up. "Just to clarify," he says, "are you the planet, or is the planet you, or is this a complicated relationship I shouldn't ask about?" She pauses. "We are," she replies. He nods slowly. "Of course you are. Why would it be simple?" She studies him, or the closest equivalent, her form stabilizing slightly as if his presence is helping anchor her. The distortions lessen just enough that her outline becomes more coherent. "You are loud," she says. He blinks. "Loud? I haven't even started complaining yet." "Your thoughts," she continues, "they move." He lets out a soft, incredulous laugh. "Yeah, that's generally how thinking works." She tilts again, the motion smoother this time. Ours do not. He considers that, then gestures vaguely around them. Right. Yours just exist in all directions at once. I'm starting to see the difference. There's a brief silence, though it no longer feels empty. It feels shared. He shifts his weight. So, let me guess, I'm not here to explore. I'm here because I can, what translate, stabilize, make things understandable. She doesn't answer immediately. Instead, the space around them adjusts. The distant shapes sharpen slightly. The ground patterns grow more defined. Even her form becomes clearer, edges settling into something almost human, though still undeniably not. Yes, she says at last. He exhales slowly, looking out at the altered horizon, then back at her. Great, he mutters. I always wanted to be a bridge between dimensions. Really should have read the fine print. He stops trying to track where he ends and where the planet begins, because the answer keeps changing and it's starting to feel like a trick question. The ground responds to his hesitation now, not just his movement. When he thinks about stepping forward, the surface subtly reshapes itself, as if preparing the idea in advance. That's unsettling, he says under his breath. Helpful, but unsettling. She stands closer than before, or maybe he understands distance differently now. It's hard to tell. Her form is clearer, not because she has changed, but because something in him has stopped resisting the way she exists. The distortions still ripple around her, but they no longer feel wrong, just unfamiliar. You are adjusting, she says, her voice no longer struggling to form. He huffs a quiet laugh. Yeah, well, I always adapt quickly when reality breaks. A pause lingers between them, but it isn't empty anymore. It feels shared, like a space both of them are actively holding. You were sent, she continues, because you can separate. He tilts his head slightly. Separate what? She gestures, not with a hand but with a shift in presence, and the world responds. For a moment, everything fractures. Not physically, but conceptually. He sees it then, layered beneath everything. Two versions of the same reality occupying the same space. One stable, familiar, linear. The other fluid, endless, folding in on itself like a thought without a beginning. Then it settles again. He exhales slowly. Okay, I'm going to need a minute to pretend that made sense. You exist between, she says. You hold one and touch the other. He lets out a soft, incredulous chuckle. So I'm a bridge. Yes, of course I am, he mutters. Why wouldn't I be? He looks down at his hands. For a moment, they don't quite look like hands. The outline flickers, like the idea of him is being revised in real time. He flexes his fingers and the motion leaves a faint echo, a second version trailing just behind. That's new, he says quietly. You are becoming less fixed, she explains. He nods slowly. And I'm guessing that's the part where I stop being entirely me. She doesn't answer. He looks up at her, studying the way her form stabilizes when he focuses, how the world around them seems to settle in response to his awareness. The distant shapes no longer flicker as much. The ground feels more certain beneath his feet. You need me, he says. Yes. And if I leave, he asks. The silence that follows is heavier this time. We fade, she says at last. You forget. He winces slightly. So it's either I lose myself or I lose this. He gestures around them, though the motion feels inadequate. That's not a great set of options, he adds. She steps closer. The space between them feels thinner now, like a boundary that is more suggestion than rule. You are already changing, she says. Part of you remains. Part of you stays. He lets out a quiet breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. I always knew I'd leave a mark somewhere, just didn't think it would be existential. He looks back the way he came. There is no landing site, no ship, no clear path back. Just the same endless stretch that no longer feels empty. You know, he says slowly, I was worried about dying out here. He turns back to her. Turns out that's not really the problem. A faint shift passes through her form. Not quite a smile, but something close. You are not ending, she says. No, he replies. I'm expanding, which is a very fancy way of saying I have no idea what's happening to me. He takes a step forward. This time the ground doesn't move ahead of him. It moves with him. The world steadies. The distortions lessen. The distant structures hold their shape. Her form becomes clearer, more defined, as if reality itself is finally finding something it can anchor to. He exhales long and steady. "Okay," he says, "I think I get it." He looks at her, then at the horizon, then back again. "I stay." The words feel heavier than they should, like they carry more than just meaning. She doesn't respond with words this time. She doesn't need to. The space around them shifts, not violently, not dramatically, but with a quiet sense of alignment, as if two incompatible realities have finally agreed on a compromise. He feels it immediately. Not a loss, not entirely, more like a redistribution. Parts of him stretch outward, brushing against something vast and endless, while other parts remain centered, intact enough to still recognize himself. "Huh," he murmurs. "That's actually not as bad as I expected." A pause, still weird though, definitely weird. The planet is no longer silent. It hums now softly, a layered presence that feels alive in a way that no instrument could ever measure. And within it, he senses her, not separate, not distant, but connected in a way that no longer requires translation. He takes another step and the world follows. For the first time since he arrived, he doesn't feel like an intruder. He feels like part of the system. "All right," he says quietly, a faint smile in his voice. "Let's try not to break reality too much." The horizon stretches outward, no longer empty, no longer uncertain. And this time, it doesn't feel like something waiting to be explored. It feels like something he already belongs to. Until we meet again in another story, we're improving ourselves with your feedback. See you.